If you cry easily, you've probably been told you're too sensitive, or too emotional, or that you need to toughen up. But here's something most people don't know. Psychology says people who cry easily aren't weak, they're actually wired differently. And once you understand why your brain does this, you'll realize it's not a flaw, it's a feature that most people wish they had. But let me warn you, this is going to challenge everything you've been told about crying and emotions. And by the end, you're going to see yourself in a completely different light. Your brain isn't broken for crying easily. It's actually more responsive to emotional stimuli than most people. And that's not weakness, that's depth. And psychology has proven this over and over again. Research shows that people who cry easily have what's called a heightened emotional sensitivity, which means their nervous system picks up on emotional cues faster and more intensely than the average person. Your brain processes sadness, joy, empathy, and even beauty at a much deeper level. So when you watch a touching scene in a movie, or hear a song that hits you, or even witness someone else's pain, your brain doesn't just notice it, it feels it fully and immediately. This isn't because you're unstable, it's because your emotional radar is incredibly sharp. Psychologists call this trait high sensory processing sensitivity, and it's linked to deeper empathy, stronger intuition, and a richer inner emotional life. People who cry easily aren't overreacting, they're experiencing the full spectrum of human emotion in ways that others simply can't access. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Your tears aren't just emotional releases. They're actually a biological response that regulates your nervous system. When you cry, your body releases oxytocin and endorphins, which are natural stress relievers. So crying isn't a breakdown. It's your brain's way of calming itself down and resetting itself after emotional overload. Psychology says that people who cry regularly actually have better emotional health long-term because they're not suppressing or bottling up their feelings. They're processing them in real time, which prevents emotional buildup and burnout. So while society tells you to hold it in, your brain is doing the exact opposite. It's protecting you by letting it out. And that's not weakness, that's emotional intelligence in action. Here's the part nobody wants to admit. Crying easily also means you're more emotionally honest than most people. Your brain doesn't have the same emotional walls or defenses that others have built up over time. And while that can feel vulnerable, it also means you're living authentically. Psychology shows that people who suppress their emotions are more likely to develop anxiety, depression, and chronic stress because they're constantly fighting their own nervous system. But when you cry easily, you're not fighting anything. You're flowing with your emotions instead of against them. And that flow is what keeps you emotionally balanced, even when it doesn't feel like it in the moment. People mistake your tears for fragility, but what they don't realize is that you're actually processing emotions that they're too afraid to even acknowledge. And here's the harsh truth that's going to sting a little. The reason people judge you for crying easily isn't because you're weak. It's because they're emotionally disconnected. When someone tells you to stop being so sensitive, what they're really saying is, I can't handle the depth of emotion you're showing me because I've shut mine down. Psychology calls this emotional avoidance, and it's one of the most common defense mechanisms people use to protect themselves from discomfort. So when you cry and someone judges you, it's not about you. It's about their inability to sit with real emotion, and that's their limitation, not yours. Your tears make people uncomfortable because they remind them of the feelings they've been running from for years. So if you cry easily, here's what you need to remember. Psychology says you're not too emotional. You're emotionally aware. You're not weak. You're brave enough to feel fully. You're not broken. You're beautifully wired to experience life at a deeper level than most people ever will. And that's not something to fix. That's something to honor. Because the world needs people who feel deeply, who cry openly, and who aren't afraid to be human. If this hit you, drop a like and follow for more psychology that validates who you really are. And remember, your tears aren't a sign of weakness. They're proof that you're still connected to your humanity.